We have 6 o'clock on at least one slot.
All right. Make sure 6:00. Let's get started then. Good evening. And welcome to this nice air conditioned space tonight. Ben, why don't you go through the remote access procedures we're used tonight, so folks are familiar with.
Sure thing. Any of the attendees that are online can raise their hands. When the time comes and you'd like to make a public comment, use the function that should be at the bottom of your Zoom screen to raise your hands. I don't think anyone is on by phone, but for those on the phone, you would press *6 to mute or unmute. *9 to raise a hand. For those in the audience, you can just raise a hand. Jeff will get your attention, and our minute taker is remote. So if you have comments that you want to put on the record, please introduce yourself so that she can hear who you are and state where you live for the record too.
Okay. So let's get started. Our first opportunity is for public comment for items that are not on the agenda. So if there's something that someone wants to bring before the planning commission that isn't going to be discussed later on our agenda, now's the time. Not seeing anybody jump up and offer their comments. We'll go on to
I have
approval.
one non-public comment that is not on the agenda, but I will be taking advantage of the non-residential seat starting this month.
Yep.
For planning. So.
Okay. So you
Is that
get
good?
that.
That's good.
Alright.
The explanation, planning commission bylaws require at least four members to be city residents and have an optional at-large member for someone interested in planning. So we've now moved outside of city limits, and
I will take that.
the at-large
optional.
position would be filled.
Because we don't have anybody in that position currently.
Correct. Everybody was a resident.
Right, right. Okay. Approval of minutes. We have approval of our June 12th minutes. And I would note, as we look at those, we do need to change the date because it says April 10th at the top, but those are our June 12th minutes. So any comments, corrections, additions that need to be made to June 12th?
Besides the date being wrong, I thought it was an accurate representation of the minutes. I would vote to approve. With
Motion.
the date change.
Motion to approve with the date change.
I do have a question on it. I provided a written comment for that meeting, but then they were not referred to in the minutes. But so I don't know if that's the protocol, if you have to be present to.
We accept all the written comments as part of the meeting packet.
Yeah.
That goes in, and we keep the packets. We don't include full packet.
In the minutes. Okay, thanks.
And you're muted on your end, Ann. We can't hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Awesome. I will second the motion.
Okay, we've got a motion in a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All those opposed say nay, since we've all voted. I guess that's not possible. For July 10th, our meeting was canceled, so there's no formal need to approve minutes for July 10th. So let's move on to, since there's no new business, to our old business, which is the Shoreline Public Access, the updated draft plan. And Ben, you want to lead off on that conversation?
Sure thing. The June meeting, you all reviewed that and accepted public comments. And we turned those comments around and tried to be as responsive to them as we could. The updated draft plan that was put together by DCG Watershed Company adds a lot to what was missing from the first one. Some of those things that were missing were putting in relation to things like comprehensive plan or other city plans. And so where these projects came from, we noted them in the project matrix. Some other things that changed about that, there was a lot of public comment about a sidewalk conflicting with parking of vehicles along Cascade Avenue. And so that sidewalk proposal was pulled out and just exchanged for figure out a way to route people that end up on that side of Cascade Avenue back toward town. No specific project is called out related to that. Things that stayed, where we got positive public comments, things that stayed were working with Skamania County to utilize the land that they have on the north side of Rock Creek at the Upper Rock Creek Falls for better public access, recreational purposes. That's in the plan. A lot more graphics were included in the plan to help illustrate things and tighten it up as it goes. You do have more public comments based on the public involvement efforts since then. So that included doing a State Environmental Policy Act review. We issued a determination of non-significance, the implementation, well, that adoption of this plan would not have a significant environmental impact, and that specific projects would be evaluated for their own impacts at the time of project implementation when things move forward. So other public comments that I think some are in attendance, I'll let them speak to. I included a responsiveness summary to all the comments that we've received, specific written comments that we'd received for this for your review. And we can talk about that more as the meeting rolls on.
So why don't we open this to public comment? I guess for those of you that are here to talk about the trail extension around Bob's Beach, I guess I'm not clear as to whether or not the changes that have been made address that concern. So
I'll try to clarify that.
okay. Then I'll let you go ahead then.
Yeah.
And introduce yourself for our note.
My name is Bernard Versailles, and I'm a resident of Stevenson. I'm also a long-time user of Bob's Beach, and I'm here to represent Bob's Beach community. It's a group of long-time users. Some of them are windsurfers, some of them are they paddle, they kayak. Anyway, it's a great place to gather, and we've been using that park for 30 years. That's when it was created. It functions perfectly the way it is. There's a lot of parking, but the parking requirements are being met. Everybody is very respectful of each other, and people come with trailers because they come with windsurfers, but they use the parking along the railroad, and that has worked really good. And the access to the water is unique along the entire Columbia Gorge, because there's really along the gorge, there's very few limited, you can count them on your fingers, low bank access to the water for wind and water activities. There's a few in Hood River, you have to go to the Dalles anyway, but Stevenson, one of the main attributes or selling point of Stevenson to bring tourists and people from all over the world, the Portland area, Vancouver area, is really the wind and the access to the Columbia River. And when you talk about Bob's Beach, everybody knows about Bob's Beach. Many people came here and moved to the area because they were used to come on the weekends to Bob's Beach, and they decided to retire in Stevenson and gather. It's a community of people who really get along really well. So I'm here to represent Bob's Beach, really. What was proposed is two changes to put sidewalks along the railroad area. And the problem with that was that limited the flexibility of the area in terms of parking and things like that. And I think that question has been resolved, as I understand today. I think there's no, you remove that from the plan, okay? Make sure you remove everything so that it's, because the plan, incidentally, the plan needs to be cleaned up a little bit. There's some references that don't make sense because the words don't reflect the numbers. For example, there's 900 feet of new sidewalk currently in this plan that you have in front of you, but it should exclude what has been agreed upon by Ben and the other people, not to have sidewalk in front of Buffs Beach. So that has to be clean, to be consistent with the words. The other project as part of Buffs Beach was to do an asphalt trail across the access to the river. I know there's disagreement, was it asphalt, was it not asphalt? My reading of the prior documents, the prior drafts, it said half asphalt, and it was priced and costed as asphalt. There were 400 feet of asphalt trail in the various drafts that I've seen. So, and it's still 400 feet in the current document that you have in front of you. So that's another inconsistency that needs to be cleaned up in the final draft. If we're looking at different types of trail, then the cost would be different. And the Department of Ecology provided a grant to have specific projects that are, they call SMART, which is specific, measurable, actionable, etc. Okay, and also they have to be approved by the community too. Well, this one is not, because the trail across Buffs Beach would impair the functionality of Buffs Beach. We go to the river by going directly into flagstones, stepping stones, with windsurfers, with kayaks and everything. So we have direct access to the river. We're not crossing any trails. And in addition to that, there's already an existing trail, beautiful trail with stepping stones that was built 20 or 30 years ago. And it's there, and it circles back to Cascade Avenue. So there's no need to spend money, time, and waste effort in putting a new trail when there's already an existing trail there. And the new trail would be a lot of problems for Buffs Beach because it would reduce the amount of staging place. People put their equipment there, and there would be less place for that. People would not use it, because it goes back to the port building, and who wants to go between a pump station and the port building to get out of a beautiful park. And I think it could be also viewed as safety problems. You could run into it, or anyway, there's a number of issues with that. People have done a petition. There's 30 people who signed it. There could be hundreds if we wanted to. It was just doing it in one day. Some known people that were on the commission and the planning commission signed the commission, like Amy Weisfeld and people employed by the city. Everybody agrees it's a bad idea to do that. Okay, so what I would like to do is, for once and for all, remove that trail from the plan, so we don't have to waste more time and effort to fight this project that nobody wants. So that's really the point. So my recommendation is no sidewalks and no trails at Buffs Beach. Keep it the way it is. It's perfect. Don't pave paradise. It's the way it is. It works beautifully. Don't change it. No need to spend money on it. And my last comment, and I'll be brief on that and probably get some support, is regarding the invasion of milfoil along the Columbia River. I was part of the Shoreline Management Advisory Committee when SMP was developed, and you probably remember that, Jeff. We put in an action project to get milfoil programs by completed by 2021. And that was for the Columbia River as well as the Rock Cove, because milfoil at the time, 5 years ago, was everywhere, started to be everywhere. Well, now it's a lot worse. Now it's multiplied like crazy. So I was happy to see that in the current plan, we have a milfoil starting for the Rock Cove, after I put in actually all my money into milfoil at the Charlotte meeting, and as well as other people, because I think it's a higher priority than doing multiple projects that probably will not get done for many years. Let's try to focus on the problems now and do something about it. So milfoil on the Rock Cove only I understand why it would be started on that. It's probably easier because it's contained and you use different chemicals for a lake than you would use on the Columbia River. However, I brought some pictures. You'll see that the Columbia River on the shore is very shallow, and there is really no movement of the water. It's pretty stagnant. So the chemical treatment can also, I believe, work on the Columbia River at this time of year and into September. However, you will require different permits because it's the Columbia River has the salmon, and salmon has to be treated differently. So what I would like to see in the plan is some type of program that would look at the feasibility of milfoil treatment along the shores of the Columbia River. And I took some pictures. You probably know already, so I can pass it if you want, but it's everywhere. It's at the estuary of Rock Creek, it's at Budds Beach, it's at East Point, it's everywhere. And it's ugly and it's dangerous and it prevents recreation. So, and it smells really bad in September too, because it ends up on the shore. So those are all my comments, and thank you. I hope you take all that into consideration.
I just, Renata, I've got just that one question. I understand the concern over the trail, asphalt or concrete, but is because there's an existing trail there now. I think one of the things that we were looking at was how do you provide at least some acknowledged trail for folks that want to use it? Are we saying that the existing trail there is sufficient?
Yeah, I'll show you a picture of the existing trail. It's there, so there's no need to have another one. To me, why spend $200,000 or more when you already have one? Here it is.
I know that when we had that conversation.
You can see I circled the trail that's in stepping stones. So you take the river trail, which is asphalt, and then you run to stepping stones, and then it bifurcates. You can go either back to Cascade or you can go to the river. It's already there. There's no need to do anything. And it's beautiful. You're in the park, you can talk to people. It's an adventure for people who are not windsurfers to meet the windsurfers. And you had people testify at the last meeting already. There was 2 people who made that comment, but it's still in the final plan, and I don't understand why.
Yeah, I think, go ahead.
So
Yeah.
the plan as it's written is confusing. It talks about 400 feet of trail or paved area, and it doesn't locate where that 400 feet is. And so I was under the impression when I read it that it's on the area between the railroad and Highway 14.
No.
Bernard's under the impression that it's across.
Well,
there.
it's exactly 400 feet. It's at 379, and it's a trail. It's not a pathway.
Bernard, can I
Yeah,
finish?
yeah. So
So
clearly that's
Can I finish?
yeah.
So I think one clarification that we can make is on page 46, where it talks about in the box at the top, it shows 400 feet of trail. That's an area where we can add, we can tie it to a location somehow. Trail between railroad and SR 14.
Yeah, we have no objections to a trail between First Street and SR 14, or that that would be actually an enhancement that would help people to walk, So that's what I have to say.
Gotta be a picture of that somewhere. There's gotta be a picture of the proposed trail
Yep.
somewhere.
Page 40, well, turn backward.
Oh, okay,
Oh, yeah, basically.
right here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's 44 of the packet. It's the small square at the bottom right of each page.
That is north of the railroad tracks. isn't it?
That's north of the railroad. And so, yeah, like I said, when I read 400 feet, that's where I was putting it. When Bernard read 400 feet, he was putting it across Bob's Beach. There's nothing in here that says which it is, so I think we should make it clear.
We should probably clarify that.
Yeah, as long as it's not at Bob's Beach, but why then do you have that in the final report? If it was, as you said, there, it wouldn't be here. Okay, so your comment doesn't make any sense to me because it's 400 feet here. And it's really from this point. And the other problem I have, I didn't mention that before, is it is misleading. If you look at page 45, there's a box here that says current terminus of the shoreline trail stepping stones. Well, from the picture I just gave to you, it's not the case. The terminus, the stepping stones don't stop here, they go back to Cascade. So it does loop back to Cascade. So this box is wrong too and needs to be changed.
So that purple line along the river there, it's wrong.
The purple line is the existing one, yeah.
I'd say it's a matter of reading the actual words. It says current terminus of shoreline trail is at the stepping stones. It's not talking about how far the trail continues past that. It's talking specifically about the shoreline trail. And then one of the proposals, it was gonna continue down the shoreline further. So I think.
Yeah, no, I agree
stepping
with
on
you.
the edge, but-
However, it can be interpreted also that it doesn't show really that the shoreline trail also loops back to Cascade. Of
That's
stepping
not
stones
currently
too. So it ignored the
labeled as-
stepping stones specifically.
The stepping stones aren't part of the current trail system. Defined in here.
Yeah.
So you're thinking of what exists.
Yeah.
And this is talking about proposed or future.
Yeah.
Exist.
Yeah, it's, to me, it's confusing, but
The other consideration, I don't think it needs to be a guiding consideration, but a consideration for you all to make. One of the benefits of developing the shoreline access plan is that when a property owner goes to do a project, the permitting is easier when it comes in front of you. They'll provide the permits, say this implements some part of your plan. This trail is on Port of Skamania property. It's not a project the city would initiate, but it would become easier if it's included in this plan. The comments you got from the port were to express opposition to the sidewalk part, but they didn't express opposition to
well, they did,
this
yeah.
element,
Not in writing, but they did to people.
but they didn't to the planning commission.
Not in writing, but
So-
clearly the message from the
For
planning,
now,
from,
for now.
well, I'm just telling you, I'm representing Bob's Beach community. And what I tell you, and
What would the port's opposition be? What would they be?
it said it will never happen. And the port is port property.
Oh,
So let's get down to what the words actually say. So on page 45. The purple line, and if you look at the legend, it says future consideration. Future consideration, right? You got that? Of public access.
Yeah.
It's not talking about building a trail. We're not budgeting for that.
Mhm.
It's this future consideration. And as far as I'm concerned, we should always allow for future consideration. If you
But-
object to that wordage, that's a personal thing. But
It all
from a
depends.
planning perspective, hang on.
Yeah, August, it all depends what kind of plan you want to have. If you want to have a plan that is
if
not
you could-
smart, that doesn't know, not specific, just general, just a plan in the sky, then sure that you can have that. But that's not what the Department of Ecology wants. They want something specific, measurable, and a plan that says future consideration of something is not measurable. And you risk having not the grant money that you requested from the Department of Ecology, because that in a plan, it has to be quantifiable and specific for everybody, because we want to know what you're approving. So that's my comments.
With all due respect, and you've done this several times, is you've interrupted people when they're talking, and that's inconsiderate.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if I was sitting as the chair,
Mhm.
the next time you do that, I would ask you to leave. But I'm not sitting chair right So we should all be respectful of each other and not talk over each other. Allow us to finish our train of thought, and then you can respond.
Yes, is something, Mr.
Yes.
Okay, you spent a lot of time talking about public participation in your past meetings. I know you really wanted to have public participation. Well, when you get public participation, it sounds like you don't want to hear about it, or it bothers to. So I just want to, and I've been a member of the committee before. So August, I'm just think we would have a conversation and talk about the issues. That's all.
Yeah.
And I think that's what August is saying. I think we
Yeah.
just want to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak without being spoken over, and just
I agree.
we'll go ahead with
Okay.
that.
But I'm just asking if that is a favor. And yes, we've worked together.
Yeah.
In the past before, but allow us to finish our train of thought before.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we understand just exactly, what the comment is.
Yeah.
I mean, and I understand your desire to see something, if it's going to be here, it has to be measurable. I'm not sure. I think overall, yeah, that is a good standard for the plan, but I think the plan also shows areas where there's a concept there that maybe looked at some point in time. That's fine too. But I think we want to recognize that if we're talking about a trail in this area, it's got to be compatible with those other uses that are in play. And I think, from your own photo here, there is already sort of a de facto trail that already exists.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So maybe not in the same alignment, certainly, but
And I'm concerned about, I'm not cutting you off. I'm just concerned about time being requested for participation from the citizens. And I'm here, I'm the voice of Buzz Beach, okay? I have no personal interest in this. It's just because I've been involved with this committee, and I thought it was my responsibility to represent. And I have, it's not on my property, okay? So, but I'm telling you what people think about it. And if we could just put it where it should be for now, and maybe down the road, if we have an interest, we can revisit it, but don't put it in a plan that we don't know what it is and how much it's going to cost, and it's not specific. And yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't think we're talking about something specific. I think that's the way we took out the sidewalk and basically the asphalt. So we sort of left it open. What form might that take? Could it be stepping stones? I guess it could be stepping stones if there's something there that we can use as well. I think the concept here was to say, hey, that access along the waterfront is an important public access. Not just for the community that's there now. I mean, you're using it, and others are going to use it as well. How do we provide for that access?
It's already there. Access. Yeah.
So,
that's what you heard last meeting, and that's what you hear this meeting.
Yeah.
The access is already there. It's been there for 35 years. There's stepping stones. It's low bank, and if you put more stepping stones, you're going to reduce the amount of space that people can use. And that it's not an enhancement, it's going to be a deterioration of an existing park that functions very well. That's all. So I'm going to stay with that comment, but I don't see anybody sees Amy Weisfeld, all the people who are using this beach have been using it for many years, don't see, they're against it. So if you want to hear that, you got it. So.
well, no, I appreciate that. I mean, that's a good input for us to take a look at. I understand. I don't think we're trying to set up a situation that's in conflict. I think what we're looking for is there something we can do that just improves public access to the waterfront?
Yeah, but not there. There are many opportunities to improve somewhere else.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but when you called in at the last meeting, I agreed with that assessment that we didn't need to leave that in the packet as a project. So what you see here, and again, I'll go back to the wording, is future consideration. And that's just from the planning's perspective. We're leaving that open to future. It may not be any of us sitting here. But if you don't include it now, it becomes much more problematic in the future to do it. So you kind of always want to leave the possibility out there. If you and I are both here in 10 years, there's probably still not going to be a trail built. But then we have to leave that possibility for the future consideration. And I think that's what the package shows.
One thing I would offer is that you could take it off the table for the port to do that, or you could make it more difficult for them through the permitting process by removing it. If you just don't want it, if you believe that any change down there is detrimental to the current access or it is there, you could make it more difficult for the port to implement a project like that. It's a different way to look at inclusion or lack of inclusion in this.
Again, I default to not boxing yourself into a corner from the planning perspective. You want to try to leave as much possibility as you can. And understandably, if it's for future consideration, obviously that'll be another conversation in the future about it. And it may be decided that we're still good with the way that it is and we don't need to do anything. Currently, we don't have a budget for doing anything. There's not a plan for building anything anymore because we've removed that at the last meeting. So the way that I read the current packet, and I totally understand your concerns because I had those same concerns, but I think this alleviates that.
But the Department of Ecology, specifically in the grant, said that the project need to be smart. So putting for future consideration is not a smart project because it's not quantifiable. We don't know what it is. Okay. So, I mean, I was a planner. I've been working in planning for many years. You don't put in a plan some things that you cannot measure. Okay. So it will never get done. So, and plus you're requesting people, you create uncertainty to everybody. You know, if somebody wants to invest or do something, you know, they don't know it's in the plan, and you want to be clear in terms of what you're going to do, and then you can do it quickly, not 20 years, 50 years from now, and measure it so it's done. We need shorter. We need to spend our money in short and get it done. That's what we need in Stevenson, not just put it in the plan. Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that.
I mean, the example is milfoil. I mean, we had it in the SMP. It got approved. It was supposed to be done in 2021. Nothing has been done on it.
Let's finish with this particular topic. I think this map on page 45 and this map on page 44, they don't match up very well, I think, in terms of showing what we have here. It would be nice to be able to see these two maps better integrated and show that it's north of the railroad tracks. For that main access map. And I don't have any problems with leaving a public access way, if you're going to call it that. There's got to be an asphalt, concrete, or whatever. But with language in this plan that says, you know, any development of that should be consistent with, the use of this recreational use of the site. So I've been engaged in planning for many years too, Bernard, and I think the real tangible recommendations we're making in here as projects, yeah, I think those need to be measurable. But I don't think that precludes you from having something in there that might be a future opportunity that you want to look at. Undefined, but possible public access.
But there's public access already.
Yeah, well,
It's there. So why put in your plan something you already have?
In 20 years, when we are not here,
Yeah.
it may behoove the people that are to have.
Well, 20 years from now, then they'll come up with something different. You won't be here, I won't be here. And they'll have different needs, different wants, and windsurfers may not be there. But at the time, you cannot really speculate on what people will want 20 years from now.
But I also think that this plan can include language in here that says it needs to be, compatible with of that use of the site. That water access.
In the
use.
text, yeah, not as a specific project, but maybe in the text in general.
Yeah.
Kind of,
Yeah.
you can have like a paragraph, future consideration, but not put it as a SA4 project specific that will never get done if it's not specified what it is.
Yes.
I've been coming here for 20, I'm Joe Mullen, and I've been coming here for 20 years with these people here, and what I've noticed and what I'm kind of wondering about this discussion is that's port property. If stuff gets done, it's been the port.
Yeah.
And it's this, we don't have that money. I mean, there's not any money. So this is kind of a mute discussion when it's port property.
Yeah.
And
The port
the
doesn't-
trail is going to be continued. The trail was done by the port. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all been done by them. So I guess I'm coming into this meeting a little late. I just don't understand why we're arguing over potential trail that might not even be on the property. You know what I mean? It just seems like a whole lot of variables that are just unknowns.
Yes, it is port property, but it's within the city and this is a city access plan, so. Yeah,
So
a lot of the stuff that we end up doing on any of this stuff is gonna have to be done in cooperation with other agencies, so.
Okay.
It's just trying to put together that comprehensive picture. If we were all as agencies just did our plan and didn't look at what the other agencies were doing, we could have quite a hodgepodge of things out there.
Is the port into it? I mean, is there been any they're not here, so I don't know.
Well, the port is not interested. They said it will never happen on the port property. That's
Okay.
what they said. So they didn't put in a memo, Ben, but that's what everybody
It's
says.
not tested.
So if it's not in written, but I represent the Bob's Beach community. I talked to the port, and everybody knows that it will not happen on the port property because that's not what they want. So
It's really sad because
Yeah.
9 months of the year, that trail gets used. Bob's Beach gets used 3 months of the year. That trail would get used continually, whether it's raining, snow, whatever, that would get used. I mean, I've been down there, I go down there every day. And Bob's Beach is gone in a month and a half, it's almost gone. No, there's no one there. It's empty. So for a citizen of the city, that's gonna draw people to the water continually, day in and day out. Is that trail to walk their dogs, to walk their kids, to walk whatever.
Mhm.
Bob's Beach is a beautiful area. And it would be horrible to disrupt it. But it would be a beautiful way to continue on to go down to the Rock Creek is a beautiful area. The fairgrounds, there's trail systems all over there. To connect that would be amazing. I mean, to go from the boat ramp, that's a good 2 miles.
Mhm.
Or a mile and a half. I mean, it'd be awesome if it could both work. And if the port isn't involved, that's kind of a bummer,
Well, it is, and again, I think what we're trying to do is put together a plan that isn't gonna destroy a good use that's down there. I mean, that's not the intent here.
Yeah.
I think it's simply to say, how do you have public access to public lands along that waterfront, which is sort of the charge we had from our grant funds with ecology. So, again, I think it's certainly to say that, hey, one of the things that needs to be addressed in any public access down there is this compatible with the existing uses that are there? And that goes to say.
that's
along
what the
with more-
petition says. If you read the petition, 30 people signed it, including Amy Weisfeld. That's what it says. So you get the answer right there in front of you. So why keep
But
saying we should do this, we should do that,
it's
but
not a project. There is no money allocated for that. It just merely is for future consideration. If your objection is that we
Yeah.
don't want to hear anything about any future consideration, that's fine. Go ahead and say that. But I think that's a responsible planning thing
Mhm.
to leave that opportunity for future decisions to be made. Not right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with in the
Now.
text, yeah, in the text is fine, but it is portrayed as a project. It's called SA4, and it has a cost estimate for the 400 feet, and it's got a cost estimate for everything, and it also has mitigation impacts estimates too. So if the trail was done there, then you'd have mitigation that we'd have to deal with other location on in the area. So it's got consequences. It is a project. It's not just, if you want to move it as a what if or general description, I have no problem with that. But as long as it's-
That's what we did last meeting,
Yeah, yeah.
when you were on the.
And that
phone.
should be, yeah, I agree, and
Yeah.
it should be reflected in the final draft. If the final draft just have a text that just say we need to consider other options, I'm just totally fine with that.
And I think the project description that we're looking at here, to me, is more focused on what's going on north of the railroad tracks than what's going on down below. If I'm reading this correctly, yeah, I don't see a lot of reference to that.
To the extent that it references this property in the next steps, it says engage windsurfer community to ensure suitability of connections between Columbia River and West Cascade Avenue and Russell Street. And so engage them to ensure suitability is the guidance that it gives when you're making future considerations.
But wasn't there a cost estimate too, in addition to this document that you had before?
I think the cost estimate is for that segment above.
That's the way I read it. It's not,
Because
it's not clear.
In the
So
prior
it should
draft,
be-
you had tables of cost estimates, and you had actually 400 feet of asphalt, 900 feet of sidewalk, and every project had a cost estimate, and it was used to rank different projects. So it was a project, no doubt, okay?
But Bernard, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, I was looking at this diagram on page 44.
Yeah,
It shows a totally different alignment. It's all north of the highway, and I assumed that's what SA4 was, and that's what the cost was.
SA4 includes this section, but also the Bob's Beach section.
Which,
together.
So
that part
we're-
that you're continuing to ask about is the part in section 4 of the legend that says future consideration. Future
So-
consideration is not a project.
And I think, again, this map on page 45 highlights that area that you're concerned about, but what the project really focuses on is that area north of the railroad tracks when you start looking at this other. So, you know, I think, I'm not quite sure that we really have a big difference here in terms of.
Yeah, no, I have absolutely no problem with page 44. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a great idea, and Joe also, I think, has a good idea. We'd like to be able to walk there from the river to Rock Cove. The only problem we have is just that loop here on page 45 that we don't need because we already have it. So if you can just remove that and clean it up, so that we just keep the best of SA4, then we go ahead and have a project.
Again, look at the legend on 45. Go down to section 4, right?
Yeah,
You
no,
see
I
where
can
it
see
says
future
here's-
consideration, yeah.
Here's the difference.
Yeah.
Things that say proposed, that's a project. Down there, the purple with the black lines underneath the proposed sidewalk connection, which is the Bob's Beach loop that you're talking about.
Yeah.
It says future consideration of public trail extension.
Yeah.
Right?
I
That's
understand that.
not a project. It's not in the budget. It's not anything. All it does is leave that future consideration there.
Well, turn to page 46 then. And look at the first box here. Proposed description of the project, proposed feature, okay. Pedestrian improvements to connect waterfront and downtown to Rock Cove. Proposed features include 900 feet of new sidewalk and 400 feet of trail. Then you go back to page 45 and you see that what relates to page 44, the connection to Rock Cove is only 150 feet of sidewalks. So the difference between 900 feet and 150 feet has to happen somewhere else. And it was happening in prior drafts at Bob's Beach, which was exactly the sidewalk going from the port to Russell and then across the railroad, and then from Russell to Seymour Street. That was the missing piece. The rest of the 900 feet.
I think with some calculus magic.
Yeah, so it's-
looking for where that 400 number lands.
It was in the prior draft. It was clear.
And it was.
Yeah.
When I read it, 400 feet is here. When you read it, 400 feet.
900 feet of sidewalks.
Okay.
The point is that I think the Bob's Beach access loop is not in this it's not a project, it's just for future consideration.
It's just a context.
And so whether it's reflected in the 400 and that really needs to be changed to 320. That's a numbers thing that we can change in the box, but the basic idea is that no, currently we are not doing anything with Bob's Beach access trail loop. We are just leaving that as a future consideration for the future.
But I think
That's it.
that's not clear in the document. You know, I think we can clarify that in the document, that the project is this, and it runs along here north of the railroad tracks. And I think we can clarify that. I think that's, you know, that's what we talked about it the last time, because we heard the concerns about having that paved sidewalk there.
Yeah, it was clear to me because I've been involved since the Charlotte meeting, and I talked to the consultants, and I looked at the prior drafts and the changes from draft to draft, so I can track really well. And the numbers haven't changed. 900 feet stayed 900 feet from the beginning and 400. So, but the text has changed. So by deduction, I know where it is. Okay.
Well,
So-
I think we need to make sure that that's cleaned up and reflects what the actual project is. It, you know, if it needs to change in terms of the amount of sidewalk or trail or whatever. So that it's clear that we're talking about SA4 being that project that's north of the railroad tracks. So, yeah, I understand. I understand where the confusion's coming from here, and, you know, I thought we had addressed that at that last, but it didn't get fully reflected, I guess.
Personally, I'm not
Or
confused.
it's clearly
Yeah.
reflected is I think. is-
No one's saying you're confused. There is confusion. on
Yeah. I think the numbers needs to be cleaned up, because there are some inconsistencies between the text and the numbers, and it's your decision to decide if you want to include it or you. But the other thing we're going to talk about is the milfoil.
Mhm.
Yeah, so all I'm going to say about it is that we had a milfoil program in the SNP addressing the Columbia River and Rock Cove, and now this new program only looks at Rock Cove. But then in the 5 years when we initiated the program, milfoil has totally invaded Stevenson, and we haven't taken any action on it. Maybe it was one of those non-project plans, I don't know, but nothing had been done on it. We had opportunities, we didn't do that. It's been COVID and stuff like that, so maybe things got put on the back burner, but it's getting worse. And pretty soon people won't come to Stevenson anymore because it's going to be totally covered with milfoil. So all I'm asking is to get a feasibility study for the Columbia River to see what can be done.
And having spent 25 years in trying to restore waterways for salmon and steelhead, yeah, milfoil has been an issue, and controlling milfoil has been a big issue, particularly in moving water. It's difficult to treat in that context chemically, and it doesn't respond very well to mechanical. I mean, mechanical removal is a sort of a temporary, a seasonal thing that you end up doing over and over and over again. You know, I think if we were talking about milfoil control in the shoreline management plan, I don't know, Ben, I'm trying to recall, was that just in Rock Creek Cove, or you're talking more broadly about more broad? And so it seems to me we would want this plan to be somewhat consistent with the shoreline management plan. I don't have any problem in here and having this plan call for a feasibility study to see what we can do. Because I know milfoil is a pretty tough nut to crack out there, and you know, I don't know to what extent we can treat it, but you're right, it does detract from,
Yeah.
you know, the use and attractiveness of the waterfront.
The one thing I will say is we can absolutely include it in here. It doesn't mean milfoil is gonna be removed by the city. And the previous efforts that we have,
You have,
we've had previous efforts
I haven't
to
seen any.
enact. the-
you mean, where they,
We worked with the Skamania County Noxious Weed Board, the Skamania County Public Works Department / Buildings and Grounds, and Port of Skamania County to start looking at milfoil. Cities contained in its interest to Rock Cove, the port for the Columbia River and their holdings there. And the county was interested in the mouth of the Wind and Drano Lake for removal project. We advanced that. The city participated in an assessment to see where it is and where it's likely. Skamania County participated in that assessment too. Port of Skamania didn't want to be included in the assessment. And so they weren't included, and we got a better idea. And then at that point, the county didn't want to do the control project, the herbicide project. And so the city didn't pursue that on our own. So it is still in the restoration plan, shoreline restoration plan, and that's a document that can be picked up for Columbia River or Rock Cove at any time and acted upon. The action that we tried to be a part of didn't happen. Port pulled out first. You guys are concerned with the port property. So we can include it in here. It doesn't make it any more likely that it's gonna happen.
yeah, but there are grants from,
But what it shows is the city has a continuing interest in doing that. But you need to have partners to do it, you know, it's,
there are grants from the Department of Ecology. That's why we put it in at the Charlotte. Because what we're doing is for the Department of Ecology, and they're reviewing fine lines, everything we're right. So they saw really our problems. And hopefully they'll give us some grants so that we can do those studies.
And those were all shared with Noxious Weed Board for that joint effort that we tried to do.
I think we put it, just
And-
like you said, put it in the plan. Well, just put a feasibility study in the plan, and at least you,
And I'm not opposed to that at all. What I'm saying
Yeah.
is having a few keystrokes here isn't gonna get rid of milfoil.
okay.
no, but again, I think it shows that we're consistent across our plans and that the city is still a very interested participant in trying to control milfoil. Getting the county and probably the Corps involved in some of this stuff. You know, it's not something that the city can do unilaterally.
The cost was not very high. I think when I talked to you, Ben, you said it was $700 or
I don't know
initially,
the
and then
numbers.
I saw in here, your SM4 is only, what, $55,000?
Yeah.
That's nothing for a treatment cost, you know. I mean, the benefits, 45,000,
It seems like an awfully modest amount for treating the amount of milfoil that we have here. I guess I would question that cost estimate.
It was shocking as well. When we went through the process, those numbers don't stick with me, but it was very low. And I think that they guaranteed 3 seasons, three summers worth effectiveness of their treatments, and then you just put that on a program.
So yeah, it's a control. You don't eradicate.
yeah, you
milfoil.
treat it every year.
Has there ever been anything done? Because I feel like it wasn't that bad about 10 years ago. Got
It
worse.
probably wasn't.
It
Yeah,
probably
it's
wasn't
just
that bad
unbelievable.
10 years ago, but it migrates with the current because, you know, it'll come from those upriver infestations.
Right.
And we have warmer water temperatures, which are conducive to the milfoil. And so we're seeing it colonize more areas now. It's a nuisance. It depletes oxygen. Your dissolved oxygen levels go down. It's terrible for fish, which has been one of my key interests. So, yeah, it's,
So
Driving, too.
this picture was taken yesterday. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can see it's stagnant water, it's low water. And it'd be a good time to do something toward the end of August, early September, when the milfoil grows like crazy and the water is stagnant because the dam is low. You know? It's just like a pond right now.
yeah, I'm not. I'm not a. Herbicide expert, I guess, in terms of its application, so.
Whichever you submitted for the record.
You can have them all. Near East Point,
And that's.
which one? This one? Oh, this one, yeah, you can have them.
So what I'm hearing out of that is another project to the maintenance effort, talking about feasibility for the main stem. Or a different alternative is just including feasibility of the main stem and not being so specific to Rock Cove with the way this one reads on page 82.
Because Rock Cove is an action basically,
Isn't it?
and this, I think, needs to be feasibility, at least initial.
Oh, Amber Hoffman.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm a resident of Stevenson. So I did have a question on the milfoil. I think there are a lot of people who would be interested in trying to help contribute to any kind of solution. And I know that herbicides is what works in the lake, but you know, I think there's just a lot of questions out there, like when it comes up on the shore, you throw it away, does that help? Does it not help? Can you pull it up? Is there anything, do you get enough bodies that you can help make some sort of difference? I think that's part of what I'm interested in. Is there any kind of efforts that can be coordinated? Because if you take the wind community alone, I'm sure you'd have a lot of bodies that's like, hey, we're doing a work party, let's get rid of some milfoil.
Yeah, it's taken one area at Bob's Beach and it's sort of. Those people have kind of like not gone there. I mean,
Yeah.
there's not as many people going there now because of it. They're going to the boat ramp and other sources. Because they can't get their equipment out anymore. It's too dangerous. They just get stuck and they just get inundated with it.
It's nasty stuff.
And the 55,000 or 45,000 it cost is peanuts compared to the tourism impact that we're going to lose once everything is totally inaccessible. We want access to the water. That's the purpose of this whole plan. And milfoil is preventing that.
Yeah, we need to see what the last costs, you know, because you guys are talking numbers, but nobody can remember what they were. You need to see what they were, you know.
Did the county weed board do any just getting work on this?
On the Cove,
On the code?
yeah, they didn't implement the project. We did the assessment and got the quote for implementation, and we didn't follow through with implementation.
Because I know that they have a difficult time, I think, with aquatic application of herbicides.
It was on the state approved list. They weren't gonna have a problem
Oh,
with that. Their main concern is, you know, the way they look at weeds, they're these different categories. And if you're gonna spend more to control blackberry than the economic impact of having a bunch of blackberries, they don't bother with that weed. So they will bother with the tree of heaven because you can get rid of that, eradicate that, and that'll protect the apple crop. So when they look at things through this frame, they broaden out to look at the whole Columbia River system and say, if we're not controlling it from Canada or beyond Canada down to here, it's just going to come back and we're going to, it's going to be a money suck. So accepting that it might be a money suck and require constant management is a different type of decision that they're not used to making.
but I like the idea too, to see what ordinary folks can do, because I know we've worked with the weed board on control of garlic mustard and a number of other invasive species, and they've come up and they've done training with our folks so that we can do it. They still come in and do some work, which we pay them for. But, you know, if there's something that, you know, concerned members of the community can do, I just wonder if maybe the weed board might be able to do that sort of education in terms of what can be done.
Yeah, they're a great resource.
They are.
Well, and it'd have to be in conjunction with the property owner. Whichever entity that is, whether it's the county, city, or a board.
And I'm sure the property owners would even be considering helping the program because they, if you're talking about something as insignificant as a few $100s or $45,000, it can be done. You may not need a grant to do it. You may just start it since it impacts tourism, you may say, okay, instead of having this, you can focus on doing it in those spots that are tourist and used to keep the access here. It does, and I know it goes back to the Canada and everything, but if you don't mow your yard and treat it for weeds, it will be invaded, but if your neighbor has weeds, and doesn't do it, you're still going to do it in front of your house. So you just have to do it, and if everybody does it, then it will be taken care of. But if nobody does it, it will expand.
I think you can do those local levels where the local communities willing to do that. I understand that the issue of how these invasive species migrate. We do a lot with Japanese knotweed, and we've spent literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in this state trying to control Japanese knotweed, and we have finally decided we're not going to do it anymore in watersheds unless we start a quarter mile above the last observed occurrence of Japanese knotweed and work down, because any little stem that breaks becomes another plant. So yeah, dealing with these invasive species is tough, but it doesn't mean that something can't be done, particularly if it's interfering with a recreational or tourist use. That's important. How to do that, or what resources are available to do that, and how we can best do that as a community.
I think my proposal would be to amend the text of this to be less specific to Rocco, and then I'll get a cost estimate for the planning effort. So it talks about a management plan, which can include feasibility part within it. It's part of that planning effort.
So rather than just simply saying it's $55,000, is it $55,000 this year? And
it will be more, yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe.
is it a recurring cost? I think if we're going to be, realistic about what the cost of this is, to know whether it's a recurring or a one-time cost.
I'm sure the permitting process is different too for the Columbia River too, so you'll have to.
I don't know.
We'll have to find out about that too. Yeah.
I think the requirements, again, in terms of effectiveness, dealing with it in moving water is quite a bit different than dealing with it in still water.
Yeah.
Nothing isn't working.
We'll try the best we can do, and we have no regrets when everything is unusable.
Well, and once you ask the question as to why,
Yeah.
nothing will ever happen, I guess. Yes.
So would you recommend approaching the court or
It's a good place
working
to start.
with the Noxious Weed Board and just seeing if they want to?
Was that Emily Stevenson? Is that she?
Yeah. Yeah, and they're really good in terms of their
Yeah.
technical knowledge and their access to technical knowledge. Yeah. I've enjoyed working with them.
Yeah. Great resource.
Other comments?
Thank you for your understanding of the problems.
No,
Starting to take some actions on it, and hopefully in a year from now, we'll be able to say, well, we started it.
yeah. Well, I'm one of the people that believe that when we do a plan, it ought not to become shelf art. Now it becomes
I'll put it on the shelf. Yeah.
something that generates back. Ben, I had just a couple very minor comments.
Sure.
On this. It had to do, and it may seem like insignificant thing, but when you were talking about cultural and historic resources, you said a number of tribes, but the Chinook tribe was not reflected there. And I think certainly a number of these folks would feel uncomfortable to say these tribes were resettled into what is now the Yakima and the Confederated Warm Springs reservations. Because the Cowlitz and the Chinooks certainly have not been relocated either of those reservations. So I just, being sensitive, I think, to those cultural aspects. I just think that just needs to be.
Yeah.
Cleaned down.
Okay.
Particularly when the tribes have become more and more a partner in a lot of the stuff that they're doing. I think we want to treat them as respectfully and as their own entities. Other than that, I thought it was a pretty good document. The only thing that I get turned around sometimes was it uses just the term waterfront, and then Rock Cove, and I keep thinking, well, Rock Cove's waterfront. And so I started going back thinking, oh, Columbia waterfront, the Columbia River waterfront. But I don't know that that's worth going back and explaining. Any other thoughts? Anne, you've been kind of quiet. Any thoughts?
No, actually, this is a good lesson for me on understanding a different perspective than the way I thought before. I do agree with August that the way it's written in the document makes it look like it is a future possibility. But I also agree with our guest that the way it's written in the spreadsheet part, there is cost consideration there, that not cost, but it's mentioned where it sounds like it could be an actual project. And so we need clarification. And I guess I should add, I have no idea who exactly controls Columbia River water when it comes to, bad things growing in it. Because if you're talking about adding, a herbicide into a watershed, that's a huge consideration.
It is. And it's going to be EPA, it's going to be ecology.
Yeah.
It'll probably be.
The answer is yes. They regulate that.
But I read a report though from the Department of Ecology that's on their website. You may want to look at it. It's like 50 pages, and they actually seem to be very positive about that because they don't like the invasive plants and the chemicals that are being used have proven to be safe. So they are actually under the Department of Ecology. They have experts and they really seem to encourage really the treatment of milfoil.
Okay.
Because milfoil is a big problem for the Western United States.
Very much so. Yes.
Yeah, you wouldn't encourage people to just spray their stuff, and that has to be monitored by the Department of Ecology. Yeah. I do have a question for you, Ben. Department of Ecology had a number of comments. How do you feel about their comments and in terms of readiness for approval? Because this committee is supposed to do a recommendation of approval, but are we at the stage where we can do that?
The ecology comments were on the initial draft that was circulated in June.
Yeah.
And so several of them were addressed through this, and it was helpful to get those changes made, to have ecology's comments in there. So I don't think that there's any fatal flaw for what wasn't addressed from ecology that remains in here. It looks good.
They had pretty lengthy and detailed comments of things that they wanted to see before providing the grants, right, to release the money to pay for the project.
Which project?
Well, isn't that paid by a grant.
The deliverable of this plan.
Yeah,
And
so they want to see all these things being done before paying for the
No,
project.
they've already-
No, they already paid?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
so it was suggestive to help improve it, to make sure it's.
Well, actually, it's through the substantive comments. I think quite a few of them are already been picked up and addressed.
But her comments were from June 12th. So they were after, you canceled the meeting in June, so your last meeting was it, no, you canceled the July meeting, so it was in June. So the comments were taken care of
It was that
in this
same
last
one-
draft?
I think it was the same one that you called in.
Yeah.
That
I
was
tried to,
earlier,
yeah.
yeah, and then we continued on going through those suggestions.
So you want all that stuff
I think,
in this last draft?
I did at the staff level to get
Okay.
this final one.
yeah, I know we
Right.
talked about it when Ann was here and.
Oh, these are more editorial comments in many ways. Even though they said they was substantive comments, they still were pretty much, getting the right citation down.
Yeah, yeah.
So what I'm hearing from you all, should you choose to make a motion or wait on this, is that a change is due on, I'm referring to packet numbers, pages 12 and 13, where it talks about cultural and historical resources. To make that less insensitive. I'm hearing a change is due on page 40. So 46. First, the linear feet for sidewalk is incorrect. And then the linear feet for trail to be specific there to say between SR 14 and the railroad. So there's no confusion.
a little-
That's-
Clarification on that, yeah.
And then a change to page 82 of the packet related to milfoil to make it more broad, to include the Meansdown and Rock Cove.
Is there any way, Ben, they can do something on that map on page 45 to sort of?
Yep, I missed that one. I missed that one. So create an inset to say, look at the last page. Yeah, really. Focus.
So we're clear that that's the project.
Yeah. It's not the Bugsby project, it's another project.
It's there. It's not a project yet. It hasn't elevated itself to project status.
Yeah. Clarify it, and Bob's Beach is not a project, it's just a thought.
Future thoughts.
So with that, I'd ask my fellow planning commission members whether or not you feel it's appropriate to make a recommendation at this point in time, or do you want to wait and see an updated document?
How are we looking for a full attendance for next meeting?
I don't know.
I mean, there's three of us. It's kind of like, it would be nice to have that extra.
Yeah,
feedback from the
I
other-
expected full attendance tonight.
Well, everybody's gotta come back from vacation eventually.
Well, Ben, let's post this to our next meeting.
And
Ann, are you okay with that?
I am perfectly fine with that.
Okay. Any other thoughts you folks want to share? I appreciate you coming down. And saying, hey, we didn't quite get it right this time, or it's not as clear as it should be. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got some subcommittee reports here. Hey, Ben.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ben.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, I will let you and Ann flip to see who goes first.
Have a good evening.
You too.
I will gladly go first.
Well, you're up there, Ann. Go ahead.
All righty. Parking Advisory Committee, we had a great turnout proposed for our study that was supposed to be July 6th and 8th. We had quite a few volunteers set. It was all great. Momentum was wonderful. And then the Tunnel 5 fire hit and Highway 14 was closed, and the decision was made to postpone at that time because it was questionable whether it would be a good representation of a busy summer day in Stevenson because of the freeway being, or highway being closed, not freeway. So we are on point for our study to be August 24th and 26th. Of course, the momentum slowed down some because of that. So we do need volunteers. So if you know of anyone, have them email me or Ben, and we will get back to you shortly with what we have from the traffic study.
Volunteering entails walking approximately 2 miles and counting and noting what you
Counting
count on a sheet.
in a 2-hour time frame.
Yeah, for 2 hours.
If I have to count higher than 10.
Yeah, where your
You can
sandals.
see your toes.
Hash marks, you know?
How many volunteers do you need, Ann?
I don't, Ben, how many do we need right now? Do you know?
I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but we have slots for 4 volunteers in each 2-hour shift, starting from 10 until 6.
Yes, it's 11 to 6, but we're doing 10.
11 to 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're basically walking.
You walk a designated route and you either count the number of vehicles parked along the block face, or you note specifically which space is filled, depending on if it's the core area where we want to see if vehicles are turning over, if they're just parked there all day.
Oh, I see.
The license plate info.
Oh,
And it's all on it. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you look at the piece of paper that our volunteers are going to be given, 5-minute explanation and they're ready to go.
cool.
It is cool. It is cool
Yeah.
watching it come together. We were disappointed in the fire, but
Yeah.
couldn't accept the asterisks either. So
Yeah, I
the
appreciate that.
24th and the 26th is still during the summer vacation. And it's the last full week before
So
school
people
starts.
will be out. Hopefully.
Gangbusters. Hopefully they'll be out in droves.
Yeah.
Another data point nonetheless,
Yeah.
so.
So that is it until next meeting, and then we'll have more information.
We'll have more information. They are putting together a parking master plan. Task 1 of that effort is to focus on accessible curbside parking, so ADA spaces. The guidance documents that we have suggest that downtown Stevenson should have 30 on-street accessible parking spaces.
Wow.
We have 3. Those are all located surrounding the Stevenson Landing boat launch on Cascade Avenue. There's none up
Downtown.
up in the real commercial core. So they've started there and identified how there could be 33 of them, and they'll prioritize which ones should go in immediately or which ones should be part of a plan to be implemented with future projects. The guidance documents take that approach, that when you do a future project, then's the time to include accessible spaces. But the committee membership is very keenly identifies the need for spaces now and not waiting. So
Wow.
that'll be good. And then other improvement projects. The way these things come together is specifically which improvement projects or restriping or addition of spaces are recommended will be informed by the usage study that we're doing. And that list of recommended projects will estimate the cost for that to understand what it would cost the city in order to add those spaces, so that we might adopt a program that would allow for payment in lieu of on-site parking. So you don't want to do those 4 spaces on your site, that's fine. You don't have to. You can pay this number of dollars per space that'll enable the city to increase the supply of on-street parking. So all of those things will come together for you to review and see if you want to recommend council adoption of that sort of program.
Well, that's great. That's great. Our annexation committee has met twice now. Twice.
Reconstituted.
Reconstituted, and that is, myself and Charlie Hales, Michael Johnson from the city council, Ben. And we have been trying to go through, I think, try to get our arms around what should be the things that we're looking at with regard to an annexation policy. In other words, why would someone want to annex? Why is that in the best interest of the city? In other words, we know that if someone comes in with an annexation request, they have something in mind. As we saw in that last request, the fellow wanted to develop his land and he wanted services for that. Well, how does that benefit the city? One of the things we've talked about is that if we're going to annex somewhere, is it really consistent with what we need as a city in terms of a city use, land use up there, in terms of density and type of use? So that was one of the considerations we had. We've also talked about, well, how do you address providing services? Do we look at, an improvement district is required? We've talked about, our sort of intent is to say, hey, if you want to, or if someone wants to come to the city with an annexation, rather than the city going out and saying, we plan to annex these areas. We don't think we want to do that. We just don't see where that works. And one of the things that is sort of shaping us, as we enter into these discussions, is looking around the existing city limits and saying, what are we seeing out there in terms of land use now? What are there areas out there that might be desirable or that we should give priority to if someone comes in with an annexation request? In other words, something that has enough flexibility in terms of its current use and its physical character that we could have, a higher density city land use there. So those are some of the conversations that we're having at this point. Ben's been trying to cobble together all the stuff that we've sort of thrown on the wall. And we'll be back together here and again in a couple of weeks to continue to move that ahead. We have not had any direct committee contact with the county. Ben's had some conversations. And we know that sooner or later we will have to have that discussion with the county. But it's interesting to me that when you talk to the county, either the public works director or the planning department, they're all saying, go talk to the county commissioners. So don't seem to be interested, or they don't feel it's their role to take up the need to talk about future annexations and how the county and city would work together is something that they would initiate. It's something that they want I think basically the county commissioners to say, yes, this is something we should be doing. Ben?
The policy is going to come together nicely. It's not going to be a 30-pager for you all to read and shuffle through. It'll be operational, I think, immediately. Some of the decisions that need to be made during each annexation, one step back. An annexation is a two-part process. First is a property owner or a group of property owners that represent at least 10% of an area come and bring the question to the city, and the city then has to decide, do we want to move forward with this at all? If we do we change the geographic area from that collection or include others, or reduce it? Would the annexation area assume city indebtedness? And what's the zoning to propose for that area? There's a lot of small decisions in there that need to be made, and without a current policy, it's very hard for staff to provide a staff report to the city council. And so we saw that play out the last time a proposal came in. There was this potential annexation area if you wanted to just go with the one property owner that requested it. Or you could square up city limits a little bit and do this larger area, or you could square it up even more and do this area. And the city council doesn't deal with this, and so they're trying to process what all this means without a policy that helps them filter through how to do that. So I'm excited to streamline that a little bit, make decisions easier, make staff reports to the decision-making bodies easier.
Yeah, and it goes back again to what's in the best interest of the city. Clearly, you want to be able to have, an effective and efficient extension of public services. And two, you want to be able to have that range of land uses that you would like to have within the city. And so having this not only gives the city council and staff, as well as the planning commission, some basic criteria in terms of what it is you need to have. It also gives anybody who's entertaining a request to annex some clearer picture as to what the expectations are. So again, I think it serves everybody's purpose well to know what those expectations, what will be expected of the landowner and the city if we move ahead in that process. Because right now, who knows?
Or is part of the discussion still like a default zoning that initially they would come into, and then if they wanted to change it to something else, that would be a secondary process and not inclusive in the overall. Yeah. And I think that's important. I think I voiced that.
Yeah.
In previous councils, we had that established, and that really made it much easier because it was not such a arduous process for the community to understand what was going on, because anyone that came in on the same base, not like, well, he got to come in as a commercial, and now they're building a factory there, but I can only come in as, ag, and it makes it difficult. And so if everyone comes in at the same default, then the zoning becomes a separate appropriate for that specific area condition. Maybe that in that annexed area, you may have some aspects that multifamily makes a lot of sense, but not for the entire property. Or that there's some, residential commercial aspect. But
In a relatively small area, it may have basically the same zoning, but if you had a fairly large annexation area, there could be several different.
I mean, without
Land
creating
use
less little
classifications.
pocket,
Right.
zoning, which makes things difficult, but when it makes sense, in the whatever area it is. That's going in.
Yeah, the way the discussion's unfolding currently is to facilitate, well, just to be more responsive. If you want to join city limits, we're going to evaluate mostly your area unless it really just doesn't make sense, and we need to expand that in order for the efficiency of service extensions and that sort of approach. The zoning discussion, the way that's unfolding is to either consider that one property owner, if they know what kind of zoning they want when they want to come in and they want to shorten the red tape that they go through, then we would consider that as part of the process. Or if they don't, or in other circumstances, we'd have this holding zone. My suggestion for that isn't to apply a current zone that we have, but to apply just to create within our zone some holding zone for annexation that would essentially permit existing uses, but require zoning for any other land use change.
And that's how we did is anything that came in as an annexed property came in as a residential one classification. And if part of that annexed property, if it was multiple individuals, if they wanted to go RV, residential business or something like that, and it fit in the overall comprehensive plan.
Right.
Then that would then become the next step, but not like, you know, everything in this annexed area is all gonna become this one thing, because it defeats the purpose of the intelligent planning aspect of it, so. Excellent.
Yeah, I think, you know, any process involves wrapping your arms around the problem.
Well, and I
With the
think what
group
we
that
saw
is-
was that the lack of an understandable process, like when you come in for a building permit. Here's the things that we need,
Yeah.
here's what you need to do, and this needs to happen. Not like, hey, I just wanna be in the city, man, you know, like, let me in, that's great. But here's the information that we need to make that decision. Not just for the city, but also for the residents, because they ultimately have a say in that process, so.
Well, yeah, and you want to make sure that everybody that comes in gets, you know. fair
The
and
same
equitable treatment, you know,
information,
it's consistent.
exactly, yeah.
You don't want to, you know, have somebody come in and say, well, yeah, but you annexed him and you gave him, you know, all these benefits.
That's the slippery slope that you don't
Well,
want
yeah.
to go down.
Yeah, exactly, that's right. So I think having that policy basis will be good. And the other interesting question that we have is, why would someone want to annex into the city? And we know that, you know, if I got a parcel and I want to develop it, yeah, I need those city services to get to the density and make the economics work. Yeah, that's it. But if we're looking at some of these areas that have been fairly well developed, why would they want to annex? And they probably don't. The only thing that we that we sort of touched on is if they end up having water supply or septic issues and they can't address them on site any longer.
And
We,
I
but we
think,
haven't seen that yet.
yeah,
We could.
but I think that's, you know, certainly part of that future. You know, being able to look ahead and plan a little bit for that. I mean, not having a plan is not a great plan to go forward with. And so, again, I think the process that you guys have started is a good one. And will make it so that, you know, it'll become more more clarification, less confusion, and, you know, will everyone benefit.
We've talked to about designating perhaps priority areas for annexation where we really would benefit the city in terms of how the city operates.
And I think, does the current comprehensive plan address that type of?
The comprehensive plan has three things concretely related to annexation. One is to develop policy. Check. As a suggestion within that policy, prefer annexation of developed areas adjacent to abutting city limits. Okay, we're figuring out what that means.
Yeah, what is that? What is the
Yeah,
developed
In a
area?
policy sense. And then the third thing is in our future land use map, we project the range of land uses or we anticipate a range of land uses for different areas. Many of them are high density residential that in our umbrella would be R1, R2, or R3. Some of those adjacent areas are low density residential where we wouldn't anticipate extending sewer to. And then there are some trade areas identified too. So adjacent to the transfer station, underneath the power lines, is a spot where we could see increased trade activity, industrial or commercial activity. The area on the waterfront, the Copley site on the waterfront west of town, if it comes in, that's not coming as residential per your comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I mean, all of these things are helpful. You know, in the conglomerate, you know, individually, they may not seem to have much importance or relevance until you start to put all the pieces together and you're like, oh, we can. Because again, it becomes you know, how do you explain this to somebody who's like, oh, why are you doing this? And it's like, because our comprehensive plan says this are the things that we have prioritized as a potential place to move on to, and this fits within that. So again, it goes into that kind of prioritized ranking of like, you know, this is really highly beneficial for these reasons versus something that is, you know, less idyllic for the city as a whole, but still may be a good opportunity to annex.
Yeah, and I think as we look at, you know, how could you or would you prioritize areas? What is the rationale behind each of those priorities? So again,
Exactly.
you've got those findings of fact that you can use
Right.
when you make a,
Yeah.
make a decision.
And like I say, individually, they don't seem to carry a lot of weight. But when you can add three of those together and present that as, you know, these are the overwhelming rationale that this is a really good idea. Other people can understand that. They may not agree with each detail, but they get the concept of this isn't just a one-off or, you know, a favor to somebody. This is actually something that's well thought out. And that's what we want to try to appear like we're doing,
Well,
is
and it's-
thinking about stuff.
And it's nice to have that for staff too. So that as they,
Then
because-
wing it. you know.
because they're the first people to take the abuse. In terms of, you know, why aren't you letting me do what it is I want to do? Right. Okay. What else you got for us, Ben?
No links, this month for thoughts of the month. Update on the broadband planning efforts that we've been going through. So the results of that rapid design, study funded, technical assistance funding through the state broadband office were, positive in a way that they are, those consultants are suggesting a fiber to the home project, for Skamania County.
Wow.
And they're suggesting that on the back of the other effort that was happening in parallel, the general needs, the statewide needs, where they asked for countywide needs. And so that was produced. They believe, well, they're anticipating a certain allocation of funds to each county. The fiber to the home project would be at that or just below that number of funds they anticipate being allocated this way. So the consultants were like, we don't usually say this, but yeah, we're recommending fiber to the home for all of these areas that we discussed. You want us to contact the incumbent internet service provider to get that going. So that's the step we're at now. It's getting ready to make those contacts with the incumbent providers and let's see some change.
That's great.
That was chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah, hearing that, oh, there's no internet up there, you know, like Starlink, you know, they'll hook you up like.
Then the wastewater treatment plants was the other one. I think that I've given updates on this, but just to underscore, the timeline is delayed. We were hoping to be done this year at this time, and that's delayed until sometime next year. Supply chain issues for part that turns it all on at the end of the day, some electrical
Control systems.
controls.
Just saying, the swimming pool's not gonna be ready. What?
The moratorium on commercial connections that was in place previously has been altered by the council based on the delay and discussions with all the regulators at Ecology. So instead of any commercial connection or any connection would have to pre-treat down to residential strength. So you can do whatever you want in your business, but as long as the waste looks like what comes out of residence at the end of the day, that's what the previous moratorium said. The process to get something down to residential waste, it's not really feasible. So it essentially operated as a commercial moratorium. It's been altered to be, Tiffany, you might be able to help me out, but significant industrial user, which has a specific threshold of what's in the waste stream. And so that's brewery status, not restaurant status. So restaurants still have to go through and do the grease traps and the things that you need to do to be a restaurant, but you don't need to, look like a residence at the end of the pipe, at the start of the pipe, city pipe, so. Uh,
Well, the operations down there look pretty good in terms of the measures that have been taken in the past to treat some of the.
They are hiring, when we get all done with our plants, Ecology recommends that we have 4 FTEs devoted to the operation of the sewer system. We currently have probably not quite 2 when you add them all up, but we're adding another operator in position down there. They've done interviews, extended an offer. So starting
And
to
he
get up
accepted.
and accepted.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting to the point where we can make sure that those operational changes that have been made stay made and got staff doing everything that needs to be done.
Good.
And they're getting all the fog pumps and all of that. Devin is creating kind of a program to get everybody on board and get it squared away, because some of them were falling through the loops. So now we're kind of tracking everybody and putting them all in. He's kind of cracking the whip on that.
Operational discipline.
Sternly written letter.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good. That's good.
That's all I have for you.
Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I will second it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Bye.
Aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.